What is happening, people? We're back again, hopefully in slightly less choppy conditions than the beginning of last week's podcast. We've already got our special guest in with us today. Myself and Quinny are joined by none other than Lairdinho, the man, the myth, the legend, Sorare Data Famo. We are going to be grilling him for some alpha this week, no doubt. Good to have you on, Laird. Long-time listener of all of your content and podcasts, and that feels like we've got an OG on session with us this week. How are you doing?
I'm great. To be honest, like I'm totally fanboying this one. Like I love this show, and I've done like a ton of stuff with Quinny like over time. And
good and bad.
Good. Yeah. The content was good. Whether it turned out everything else after that was not our fault. But yeah, Stish, I don't think we've ever done anything together.
No.
I'm a huge fan of yours from this show. And I've made, not to put you on the spot, but I've made some purchases over my Sorare time specifically because of cards that you own.
Oh, I hope I'm in the red.
No, it's really, really fun to be here, and I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. And Quinny, how are you doing, sir? A bit of End Product in the week for you?
Yeah, I just about managed to get myself a little bit of ETH to come out the midweek with, but yeah, all good. I'm wearing my Atlanta United shirt today. If anyone's just listening, this is a little bit of luck, hoping that Giakoumakis goes to Atlanta. Thought I'd wear it today to kind of put that out there, you know. So hopefully he goes to America rather than Japan. But yeah, everything's all good, man.
Yeah, I spotted the Atlanta shirt and I thought, not Atlanta shirt. Almost got it wrong. But yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Giakoumakis. I thought I hadn't sold mine because I had one not too long ago. And when I saw the news of him moving to Japan, I got quite excited and then realized I'd sold him a few weeks ago. So it kind of had my excitement dampened a little bit. But what do we think? Atlanta or Urawa? Which one's going to be better for his price action?
Maybe Urawa, but like Atlanta could use him.
I would think so.
Who knows what's going to happen? Like with the J League, like you could have a super XP cart because if you don't get the new season, you'll have those. You know, basically what we see with all the Russia cards now. It feels like you're playing against 85% XP cards when you don't have them. So in that respect, it could be all right. But I mean, he should smash it both places, right? Like there's a path at least for him to do really well.
Yeah, I think so. So let's hope it's America, and that complements the rest of my cards. And and on that note as well, just before we get into the podcast properly, I bought a Defender Laird that's heavily linked to NYC, a guy by the name of Brian Kufri at Mallorca. So I went and picked him up as well. So I've now got, if Giakoumakis goes, I'll have the spine minus a goalkeeper of a super rare MLS team for all these new cap modes we've got to play with in the summer and whatever. So that's the only reason I've got.
That should be a fun one. Like I actually think, like based on what has happened over the offseason, like New York City FC should be terrible next year. Like they lost like so many really, really important players. But MLS is so weird that like if they were the best team in the league, you'd just be like, oh, it's MLS. It's just what happens sometimes.
Totally, man. Whole midfield's gone now and everything else. And like as we come on to like, you know, I think I was editing the Major League Sorare video for the Sorare TV channel that Trip and B and
love that show.
Draft Kicks do. And it wasn't until editing that it kind of dawned on me that the MLS season is only a month away. I think this is the last game week we've got of like the old normal, and then we're coming to new normal on Sorare, as it were. And then, you know, over the next couple of weeks, we're expecting lots of other stuff to be unveiled and whatever. So it's quite an exciting time, isn't it? Now this kind of end of January, beginning of February period we're in.
Definitely. I'm feeling the excitement. There's a definite buzz about. There's a bit of an atmosphere growing on Twitter among the users at the minute. Everyone's waiting for the Prem. I think we're all pretty much. It's nailed on now. It looks like it's happening. We've got all these new game modes rolling out. You guys must have your work cut out as Sorare Data Laird. I can imagine like you're just juggling about 70 plates at once at the moment with everything that's changing on the platform, trying to keep up with the data streams that people need to kind of make the best decisions at the moment. But yeah, it's very exciting. We got the Argentinian league starting back up again this weekend, haven't we?
Yeah.
Bundesliga 2 is back again. We've got a lot. And I think, Quinny, you actually made me think in the week that you started talking about some of the prize pools, looking at those, and they definitely look like they've been like buffed up a little bit this weekend. You had me looking, and for anyone watching or listening that hasn't had a look, go have a little look at the prize pools. There's definitely an uptick in the size of, obviously I play U23 quite a bit, and I noticed a quite hefty jump in prize pool size for this weekend, and hopefully we can expect to see that continue once all these cap modes open up. We kind of got a little flavor of it looking at what's available to us this weekend. We've got the new draft modes that have come in for free to play, and the Amateur Pro, which I think is what they're calling it, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of like a 270 cap mode, right? So it's like a light version of the cap mode that you can play. Is it a limited or 2 limited? It's a bit like it replaces the old academy, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah.
And they're available in the respective sort of leagues. We've got now La Serie A, Bundesliga, La Liga, and Liga, all kind of open. Did any of you two get involved? Are you involved in any of those cap modes from the off? You've probably both done a draft. I did a free draft, but anyone getting involved in those early stages limited draft modes?
I haven't yet, but the deadline's tomorrow, so I'm sure I'll make some solid panic buys tonight before the deadline. But I like the announcement with all the new competitions. I had that weird thing with Sorare where you're like, oh man, I'm going to need a lot more cards, as opposed to just like, oh, okay, these are things I don't have to play. But like, you just feel like you should play them. And then of course, I haven't totally looked yet, but I'm sure I'm going to go in and I'm going to be like 1 card short of a lineup. And I'll be like, let me just get this one. Like they've done a really good job of making you think that you need a lot more cards. And I just where I am in my gallery, like adding more, particularly limiteds, is just like not where I need to go. I actually did a trade yesterday that included 7 limiteds. I was giving them up, and it was just like, man, I have so many limiteds of guys I've never heard of that I never use, that are never going to go in training either, now that we only have 3. And so it was nice to like actually get something out of them. But yeah, these new modes, I'm sure we'll all go into the lineup builder and we'll be like, oh, I have a lineup here. Great. And you can just like plug it in and go from there.
Yeah. What about you, Quinny?
Well, I kind of echo what Laird's saying. I think as well, like the thing with the cap modes that I like is it's like unrestricted to an extent, extra utility, because like, again, for anyone that listens to me long enough will know, like I try and build like primarily an all-star and kind of go from there. And the amount of times I move into regions, and this, I've not got a full region team. I've maybe missing a goalkeeper here. I don't have a forward in Champ Euro, blah, blah, blah. So having like more, and I know the cap modes have got their own stipulations, but just having more access where I'm not tied into like, oh, I've not got a champion striker, or I've not got a challenger goalkeeper, or under 23 goalkeeper, or whatever. I think it's going to make it's going to be a good inclusion for like all the existing players and managers like us. Because like you say, Laird, like that's part of the problem when you are thinking about playing more divisions, is it's like you need a specific piece. But some of these cap modes, you'll just unroll your gallery and there'll be somebody there that will fit it. You know, like you don't probably for those cap modes. But what might then happen is when you then put that guy in, you're like, well, he was like the best challenger defender I've got. Who's the second best that I can then replace him with, and some other, you know, and you then have that domino effect kind of sprinkling around, and you end up starting with 8 teams, and then by the time you finish, you end up with 12 and none of them win or something.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think the thing that struck me is just looking at them. I never even really thought about it or realized it at the time until I went in and thought, let me see if I can build a team in any of those kind of like 270 cap. And then I remembered that I've never really had many Champ Euro limited cards. Like I have a couple, I have like a Fekir and a couple of others that I've maybe won down the years, but I haven't really gone out. I've never really gone out to buy a limited champ team. I did have like one for a little while, but it just wasn't winning me any cards. So I just kind of disbanded it, got rid of it, just kept a couple of the good cards that I can use in like the All-Star and the, you know, like specialist underdog, use them for that. So it became apparent really quickly that I can't really enter any of those new kind of like league specific limited competitions because I just don't have the minerals. And I don't know just yet if I'm likely to go out and buy I think I'd need to go out and buy goalkeepers first and foremost. And it's like, maybe I'll open those up to myself if I win cards, but I can't see myself going out to buy to compete in those, just because, similarly to what you were saying, Laird, I don't think limited is where my money needs to be spent right now. I need to be looking at consolidating some of those like mid-tier rares into like high performing rares, or prospective super rare purchases, still in the market for a unique if and when the right one falls into my lap. But yeah, I've not got any lineups out in those new kind of limited modes, but I have gone into the draft just because why not, right? Did you guys get involved in the free to play draft? Any kind of like tips and tricks that we might have not thought about for the draft modes that you might want to share with the listeners?
I probably shouldn't admit this, but I had my son do my 2 La Liga, Bundesliga beta draft ones, and can't remember if I talked about this somewhere. I can't remember where, but so I was like, yeah, go nuts. Like, I don't need to do it.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do it. So like, what's another lineup? And I think he picked, for the La Liga one, he picked Lewandowski, and I didn't tell him that he was suspended. And I was like, let's see if this kid, I mean, he's going to be 12 in a month, not even in like 3 weeks. So like, he shouldn't, do your own research is not something that a 12-year-old kid should know. But like, Lewandowski was suspended. And so he does his lineup. We're like checking scores. He's giving me updates. And he was like, Lewandowski didn't play. And I was like, yeah, he was suspended. And he was like, well, how was I supposed to know that? And I was like, oh yeah, like Sorare doesn't tell you. Of course, now they have it. Yeah. That announcement they just had, that they will include some of that. Lewandowski would be a player they cover. But it was funny to see, like, he's effectively a brand new user, like, coming into this game. But then now with the new draft ones, and I still don't know if this is correct. Like, my goal today was to like go through everything, or just have you guys explain it to me. But basically, like, they said they were wiping all the commons. And so if the commons that you win in these new league specific amateur competitions are the ones we can use in like the pro, now what I win in those matters. Cause like I should. And so he's like, oh, can I do and I'm like, I think I actually should pay attention to this time, this time, because like I'm going to need these later. And he gave me this look like, what's the difference? And I was like, and then like having to explain to a 12-year-old, which is, I mean, probably the same as any new user. You're like, well, you can win these commons to go into limited to whatever they're called, the League Pro things, 270, so that I can then get limited, and then I can use those. And it was like 10 minutes, and he's just looking at me like, what?
Yeah.
He's like, and then, and it did nothing to dispel my fear that like what they announced was just too complicated for a lot of people. And it just seemed like if you think you're gonna onboard a ton of new people in the next few months, to like complicate the game seemed like a weird decision.
Even for me, I think looking at all of the available, and bear in mind it's going to be a lot more than this soon as well. But it is a bit daunting looking at the kind of lineup lobby, and the order of it having training at the bottom was quite confusing as well. I couldn't find training. Obviously, they've made training easier now. Someone in the chat actually said, like, can you kind of like give us a rough outline on what's changed with training? So just to keep it brief, training has changed. Well, we used to just like put all of our lineups in, like if you had a big gallery, that could be 100 odd limited training teams, right? Now you only need to line up 3 training teams. So you basically use any of the cards that you're not using in your lineups, pick 3 teams worth of maybe the cards that you want to have. I think they like double the XP for those. And then the rest of the cards will just earn like the base rate of like 75 XP, regardless of what happens in their games and training. So they just made it easier. It just means if you like think about the cards that you're trying to level up, I guess. That's kind of what I've taken from it up to this point. I haven't gone in with any real strategy. I've just kind of picked 15 cards that I'd really want the XP on before maybe their season starts, or, those cards that are like close to that 10%, they're the ones for me. That's like trying to get those up to the 10 so that then I can put them into like retirement as far as training's gone. because once they hit that 10% or better, you know, like some of those cards we mentioned, if J League isn't covered and we end up with some of those 12, 15%, then I've definitely got a few of them. I think, you know, like pre the Prem being launched, I think I've got like a 12.5% Paqueta I'm putting into training at the moment. Hopefully West Ham can improve and he can start hitting some 15% bonuses. But yeah, that's the ins and outs of training, unless you two can think of anything that I've missed.
I think the 75 XP that everyone in your club gets as standard is predicated on you having 3 training teams.
Oh, okay. So you have to do something.
I think if you only have 1 training team, that'll get double XP, but then nothing else gets nothing else. I'm pretty sure the standard 75 XP to everybody was stipulated against having the 3 training teams or having a couple of teams in the arena somewhere, I think.
Interesting.
Maybe just 3 teams total across everything, maybe. But as you were saying that there, a wee bell went off in my head, and I think that was stated.
Good point. Yeah. Well, don't forget to put your training teams out then, if that is true.
You kind of mentioned it in the kind of opening salvo session. I don't think we kind of came back to it, but Sorare Data are probably working Laird 28 hours a day at this point. He's streaming like mad across multiple sports, and I'm sure he does lots of real important work that we don't even begin to grasp on camera. But Laird, do you have anything in the offing for Sorare Data? Like for me, right, I'm just going to give this to you, right, as the question. I would love a feature that would tell me if I looked at a football player, if he has ever been L15 60 plus, for example, or if he's ever been L15, 80 plus, for example.
Yeah.
Just that came into my head the other day, and I thought I'd better mention this to Laird, and there you go. I've said it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I can't remember if somebody came to us with that or we came up with it internally, but like not a rolling L15, but like if you look at the score, like the regular score graph on Sorare Data, and then in addition to the score, you also saw what the L15 was that week. Yeah. So like similar to how we do the price graph, where like you see all the actual transactions, and then there's kind of like that shaded part behind it, where it's like this was the average when these cards sold and everything. So something like that I think is good. I do think that a lot of the ideas we have gotten from people for cat mode, I don't think people realize aren't that helpful. It's kind of funny because you're just kind of like, all right, well, why do you want to see this? And then you kind of like walk through like why they want it. And it's like, does somebody who outperformed their L15 when they were out injured and they were a 6 and they scored 35 because they started, like, is that actually good? Like, obviously it was good then, but it's not helpful for you now when their L15 is 42 and they score 42. So like, I do think like the historical L15 is just helpful from an idea of like, from players who regularly play. It also helps, like Stish has brought this up, like home away. Like if you could see that the L15's here, but then it's like, oh, he's above it every time he's at home.
Yeah.
Like that's helpful. Yes, we've got a few things that we're working on, like specifically for cat mode and for scouting with stuff like that. It's just that we're just not sure, and this shouldn't affect it too much, but like we're just not sure how many people are going to like really prioritize cat mode. Like my expectation, and it's just became 9:00 Eastern today on the 26th, but like we still don't have the calendar yet for the next, like the upcoming calendar. I expected it yesterday. I'm expecting it today. So we know like what the rewards are like, because that's going to determine whether people start really building towards their cat mode lineups or not. And like I think hopefully today's the next calendar announcement is like one of the most important announcements that Sorare has ever made.
True. It's a good point. One of the important things, or like one of the interesting things for me, is going to be looking at the sort of conversion rate in the cat modes of like players who enter into players who actually make the ETH reward, right? And it's going to be really interesting to see as a percentage of like users in each of the kind of scarcities, because you would expect limited. Most people will hit it because you can kind of acquire the pieces you need to make the lineup that you want to field quite cheaply you would think, right? Versus like rare might end up being more of a chuck in what I've got left and hope that it hits the E threshold. And then obviously super rare, I think for me, I've definitely got enough I'm probably one of those people that's got enough super rares that should be able to hit the cap if I target it. But if I don't target it, I'm not expecting to hit that cap very often. But I think $250 for is it 250 for super rare?
That's unique.
It's 100 for super rare, 250 for unique.
250 is unique. $100 is a decent win. You know, like that is like a tier 1 equivalent maybe of winning like a tier 2 maybe. Sorry, rare might be like £100 or something like that. So that's quite appealing. But it's only appealing if the card wins are also like half decent in that cap mode, because otherwise I'm going to stick the players that I need to stick into U23 or Challenger or All-Star. And if we look at this week's All-Star pool, Quinny pointed it out. This week's All-Star pool in Super Rare has a unique in it, doesn't it? It's got a star. It's got a star Super Rare for the first place, which is amazing as well. So yeah, definitely feel like that announcement of like what those prize pools are going to look like. And then it's going to be really interesting to see how many people target it, or if it just becomes a kind of an afterthought for most of us. But I could definitely see myself targeting it if the card pools look good as well. So that'd be really interesting to see. Like you said, definitely an important announcement. And just on what you were just saying about some of the bits that you're building for Sorare Data, why don't we have a little think about some of the things? Like you mentioned, there's a lot of people kind of bad ideas. I think I reached out to you in a week, and one of the things I'd like to see is a kind of ratio score of like what their home score is versus their away score. So like a plus or minus. Like what we're looking for obviously is differential, isn't it? It's like at home they score on average 12 points more than they do away, and it's like, right, great. So like the ratio is this versus an away score. I think that'd be really useful for, like how I think the team projections on basketball are like a really good example of what we might need to see in the cap mode for football, because basketball, that like projected score versus like their L10 is, for me, the only reason that I'm able to compete at all in basketball, because without that, I'm just throwing the names that I recognize against like a team that I think, they should win that game. That's about as far as my basketball knowledge goes. So I rely quite heavily on Sorare Data for my basketball entries. And I'm sure, there's a lot of things that people would like to see. Like, Quinny, are there any things that you can think of that you'd like Sorare Data to add for these cap modes?
Well, when you mention the basketball stuff, I think I'm actually really glad I've been playing basketball for the last like 20, 30 game weeks, because in terms of the cap mode stuff, and Laird will be able to talk to this much better than I, but like fulfilling the cap and having 5 guys that all project better. Like if I've got a contender rare team in the NBA, the cap's 110 points, right? All those guys are going to be rubbish-ish, give or take, right? And I could pick a team where every one of them is going to overperform their expected L10, and I could nail the cap at 110 points. But just the fact that they're going to overperform the cumulative total of 110 points, projection-wise, number one, doesn't mean anything if they don't actually do it. But number two, even if the projections do get fulfilled, it doesn't guarantee anything. It's not even half the battle, It's just, like I get caught in the trap on NBA quite early thinking, oh, brilliant, I've got a contender team, 110 points flat. They're all projected to do a bit better. As long as I get in a tier 5 or a tier 4, I'm not too chuffed with that. And then you're 5,000th, you're nowhere near. And it's not a prerequisite on any success, if that makes sense. So I'm a wee bit hesitant from that basketball experience of putting maybe too much pressure on or too much onus on any Sorare data or any data beyond like maybe what I knew coming into these new game modes, if that makes any kind of sense. I don't know if I've butchered that towards the end, but I think Laird knows what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit on the Sorare Data NBA show yesterday, that it is kind of frustrating that you could pick 5 guys who like really outperform their L10s and you win nothing. And the conversation yesterday, we kind of claimed it was about like ETH rewards in NBA, which like it's really more about a beat the game. And like it feels like if you pick 5 guys who outperform their L10, like you're beating the game. but you're still actually having to beat everyone else who's doing it. And what we have always had with All-Star Rare, it's like if you beat 205 and 250, like you get something. And now with these new cap modes, if you get 250, like you win something. And in NBA, there is nothing like that. And so you like everything, a lot of things change if they have a mode where it's like reach this amount and you win something. And they have it with the common game, obviously, like if you're in the top, I mean, I think everybody wins a common at some point, just matters how good, where you finish. But the tricky thing with football versus NBA is that like NBA is a very easy to project game. And so it's like, you kind of know where guys are going to finish and you know kind of what the reasonable outcomes are. And in football, it's like one decisive and your projection is either good or bad. You know, it's like totally thrown out. And even the underlying stats are kind of projectable, but like, again, they're kind of, you're at the whim of Opta scoring a tackle one versus a dispossession or whatever terms they use. And so that's like one of the things that I worked on a lot when I was at RotoWire before Sorare Data, is like building a projection system for football that tries to project how many interceptions Casemiro is going to get this week. And it's like, there's just so much noise in the data that like, it's just not that easy to do. And then when you couple that with the fact that you're actually having to project, I mean, what do we have, like 40 stats for Sorare, and that decisives are so I mean, they're mostly random. Like, you're never going to have an accurate last man tackle projection. Like goals you can sort of guess close. Assists are kind of based off of the goals, but they're still kind of noisy. But then, it's like everything else. Clearances off the line, like clearances themselves are somewhat difficult to project. And now you have to project clearances in one specific part of the pitch. So, I mean, I would love to have like really solid football projections in our lineup builder so that we know. We are working on. So actually, I think what I was about to give away. Like,
say it
a lot more. We are absolutely coming out with something soon. And this is, as I like to say, this is like Sorare Data soon, not so rare soon. Sure. That helps us kind of show which players in your gallery or in the lineup builder have better matchups than others. Like we all have like different ways how we do it. Oh, this guy is an L15 of 55. This one has 50, but this one is 80% chance to win and he's 60. We're trying to take all of that and give kind of a better indicator of using your gallery and which competition you're entering. Like, is this guy a good pick for that contest? And like sometimes like a U23 forward maybe have a really good situation this game week in U23, but he's actually not as good in Challenger because there's so many, he's up against guys like Tadic and Malcolm. And so when those guys are not in the pool, like in U23, like, oh, this player is a little better this week. And so we're, instead of doing like a projection, which we don't think is all that helpful, we're trying to develop a tool that or gives you some sort of indication of which guys in your gallery have great matchups this week and are playing well and are playing a team that gives up a lot of points to whatever position they're in. Like there's a lot of stuff that theoretically goes into a projection. We're just trying to make it a little more helpful in terms of just like if you see two players and one's projected for 58 and the other's projected for 58.5, like that doesn't really help you that much. And so we're just trying to be a little more helpful. I don't know if I answered your question.
I really like that point you just made about knowing the kind of power of your player in the region that you're using it. Like, I think it's this weekend or next weekend, I was doing some of my lineups and I was looking at U23 Pro. Is now that Veerman's kind of like in and out of the team, it really weakens my options a little bit in that I used to be able to go to him and know that I've got a really strong pro lineup because I've got Veerman super rare, and therefore it makes total sense to me to go there. But without him, it throws a little bit of like, oh, I haven't got like a 60+ super rare that I can rely on. I need a decisive. But I was looking at, it was either this weekend or next week, midweek. I can't remember which one, but I noticed that U23 goalkeeper options are not as strong as they would be because Costa didn't have a fixture. And some of the other like high scoring cards don't have a fixture, like Muric doesn't have a fixture this weekend. He's in midweek next week. So it's like, I looked at that and I'm like, well, with that in mind, that's a lot less people I have to worry about that can even enter U23, because two of the big, most commonly used goalkeeper cards in the division this weekend are without a fixture. And that is the kind of information that I think, you know, it's a different kind. No fantasy football site projects that for Sorare, because it's about, you know, like the power of their fixture and maybe the matchup, the player that they're playing up against. You can kind of like do that, but Sorare is unique in that these things do come into play. And I think that like giving players like not just a sort of matchup score, but like a power score within their kind of like usage. So like, let's say like this weekend, if you've got Van der Voort and there's no Muric and there's no Costa, and Van der Voort's playing like Sarang, which I think is the actual fixture, this week he's more powerful because he's not playing against Costa, he's not playing against Muric, who are like quite OP in the U23 pool. Then suddenly, if you've got Van der Voort, you have probably the best U23 goalkeeping option that weekend. Therefore, maybe you should look at your pieces in that. That's really interesting. I think that like you're saying, talking about ways that you can think more on the matchups would be really interesting.
You like that idea.
Yeah. Regionally, I like that. I'd use that. Could do
Great.
it. What are you thinking, Quinny? You look like something's going through your head over there.
One did go through my mind when you were talking there, and I hate to give Laird more homework, but like, you know, on like the impact players tab, we can obviously see how many rares of people have been used and all that kind of stuff. I would like, like some sort of like power ranking kind of thing, just to steal a term from somebody else. Like where maybe like, for example, Neymar's and Messi's maybe aside, but like Stish is talking there about goalkeepers. Like at the end of a game week, like, you know, Muric was in 500 reward-winning lineups as the goalkeeper. I don't know, Quadrado was a defender in 500 winning lineups, blah, 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 if you know what I mean. And it's like, it's kind of the impact players thing, but it's maybe a bit more, it's not just how many of them were used in a division, but it's like across this division or across the whole thing, this guy was actually involved in reward-winning lineups, you know, for 800 of the 1,000 reward winners, that kind of idea, if that makes sense. So maybe not necessarily a capped innovation, if that makes sense. But if you are in cap mode and the guy that pops up on that, you look at him and you're like, hold on a minute, that guy's L15's 40. Like, and how many people had him this week? And why is that? Yeah. You know, so that can, you know, it's just be, as you said, it just ran through my mind real quickly. And that's all. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have two things on that. The first is that I love the idea. It's actually something that I looked at in NBA a few game weeks ago, where I just wanted to see how many Luka Doncic lineups there were in champion, and then how many won.
Sure.
Because it was kind of like, if you have Luka Doncic, you win.
Why don't you win?
I was like, well, it can't be that easy. And so I looked at the data, and it is that. No, I'm just kidding. But like, it was a decent number, and you can't necessarily assume that everyone who has Luka Doncic then has 4 other good players. And so when you look at that, like somebody might have Muric, and if Muric bangs an 85 one week, that doesn't guarantee they win, because their other 4 players could be crap. But I do like that. I actually am kind of interested in like total impact, which like theoretically we shouldn't really worry about, because like how we do in Challenger doesn't really matter, or doesn't affect how we do in All-Star. But I do like the idea of just seeing game week to game week. If you pull up Van der Voort and you're like, how many people played him in U23 Rare? How many people played him in U23 Rare Pro? How many people played him in Challenger? Like, you can play him in a lot of spots. He seems like a total waste in like All-Star Rare, but like some people play him there. And so impact players is something that I'm really interested in, and we're slowly trying to redevelop that page so that it has selfishly more of the stuff that I wanted to see. It's a benefit of working here. But I do think that one of the things that not enough people care about, or maybe it's because like we don't make it easy to find it, but like where to play certain players. Like we do have it in the lineup builder that like a lot of the cards have been played in U23 Rare Pro for Van de Voort, for example. But I think it's just interesting to see like on a specific game week. I mean, you can do it on the Impact Players page if you pull up all 6 competitions he can play in. But I'd like to just see like one where it's like you click on Van de Voort and it's like, here are the 6 options, and 40% of them are in Rare, or U23 Rare Pro, 25 in Rare, and then just so on. And because I think that's one of the strategies that people don't necessarily take advantage of a lot. And it's actually one of course it came from you, Quinny, but I remember a while ago, it was probably an end product, but you were saying how, and I brought it up to you later about like lineup prioritization, that you're like, you're really steadfast in how you build what you think should be your best lineup each week. And if that means that you're playing Van de Voort in a non U23 lineup, he has the best matchup, but the rest of your players are an all-star, then you just play him an all-star. And I don't think enough people do that process. And so I just think it'd be interesting to like really see like, what is my advantage if I play Van de Voort in even Challenger Rare, which like anyone who has Van de Voort would be like, you don't buy Martin Van de Voort to play in Challenger Rare. But if there's only 3 others and he's home against Sarang, like he could have the best goalkeeper matchup of anyone on Sorare this week.
Yeah.
And if you're putting him in U23, where like maybe your lineup isn't as good as Challenger, you shouldn't, like, you're basically killing 2 lineups because like your U23 is not good enough, and your presumably other best lineup now doesn't have your best goalkeeper. And so that's like one strategy that I don't think enough people really think about. And I think arrogantly, I think it's because like we don't have that easily available on Sorare Data. And so that's one thing that that's like one of my projects.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually do. One of the tools that I use on Sorare Data to do exactly what you're talking about is one of the first ports of call when I go into the lineup builder is to just go into All-Star Rare, and use the, generate my lineup, where it kind of like picks out what it thinks is the strongest lineup. And I'll look at that and I'll be like, oh, right, I've got 3 players there that are U23, or I've got 3 players that are Challenger. Therefore, look, like sometimes it gets it wrong. That there's a better card than the one they suggest, but that's part of knowing your gallery and stuff anyway. But
love that.
I'll look at that and I'll be like, right, there's 3 cards there. So that's the first. I'm going to take those 3 cards and put together the strongest possible U23 Rare or Rare Pro, depending on like what cards and matchups I've got. Because obviously it doesn't generate for Rare Pro at the moment, just for the Rare. But I think it's a really useful, before you do anything else, straight into All-Star Rare, hit like generate the lineup, and it just gives you, it just pings off sort of like what it thinks is the best player in each of those positions, regardless of Challenger, U23, Asia. And like, if you're fortunate enough that 2 or 3 of them fall into the same region, that's normally my first port of call. Like, right, let me take those 3 cards into the region and see what other pieces I've got. And like, sometimes it clicks straight away and you're like, that looks like a great lineup. But other times it might be like, that's great, but let's go. Then that's when you start looking at the prize pools and stuff. If you really think that's a good lineup, do you use all of those cards in that pool? Let's have a look at who's in the pool. Let's look at who's not playing that weekend. Hence the talk of Muric and Costa. But yeah, this week for me was the first week that I really felt like I had a good U23 Pro entry for a little while. I just wish Veerman was a bit more reliable at the minute. I haven't really decided. I don't think I'm going to take a risk on him. I did last week and it backfired. Thought he'd play, but he didn't. So this week I'm probably going to switch him out for Kenny Taylor, who I expect to start, but is maybe he's got an easier fixture. But, there's always that worry of the rotation. But, if you don't try, you don't win. And Yeah, I've definitely got some good pieces in U23 this weekend, but anyone listening, try that out and see if it works for you. But it's been quite a useful tool since they entered that kind of like create a lineup, generate a lineup.
We have put like a lot of effort into the suggested lineup. We have it in NBA too. That's actually what you just described is exactly how I start my NBA lineups.
Yeah,
because it's like I can see the projections, but literally it just does it for me. Like, here are the best projected guys. I'm like, okay, at least I know where to start. What's funny about using it for football, and it kind of goes back to the projection thing, that if it spits out, if we use like a very specific projection, like we do for NBA, like it could put in somebody that is projected for 55 points ahead of somebody who's projected at 54.3. And maybe that the guy who's projected for 55 is playing in Belgium the 2 days after they have 2 feet of snow. Yeah. And that match probably isn't going to be as high scoring, or maybe it's just a little more of a struggle. And the other guy's playing, in gorgeous Monaco or something. And so, everything's all nice there. And so it's just like things like that usually aren't picked up in a projection. And so if you rely so heavily on them, you're kind of like missing out on, taking your own knowledge advantage. And that whole story reminded me of literally, was it last week that Nep was on? He's like, I don't want a button that just does everything for me, because there's no fun in that. I will say, in response to that, there are lots of people who just want a button that does all the work for them. But I'm on Nep's side with this, that like the lineup building process, like the Sorare Data lineup builder is not meant to like build your lineups for you. Yeah. Like it's meant to like help you make your own decisions and use your own knowledge to like put the best lineups together. But there are people who just want the lineups built for them. And so
totally. Well, a good example of that with this week, actually, I think obviously the lineup builder is not looking at someone like Florian Wirtz because his L15 is like DNP. But I know he's coming back from injury. I've seen him in friendlies. I'm expecting him to come in. Therefore, if it gives me like someone else, I'm instantly thinking Wirtz is probably in there. And those are the little things in it. It's just like use it as like a starter point or a base for like where you're going to go a little bit more in depth on what it is that you're looking to achieve at the end of the game week, I suppose. But yeah, it's good to know that you guys are always on it, because it's
one of the things that you guys brought up last week, it was an excellent show, by the way. I mean, they all are great, but was that the idea that you could have somebody basically, like if you had a single button that said like build all my lineups, and then like we prioritize like your best lineup is here, and then it just kind of goes down like here are your 10 best lineups ranked from your best lineup to your bottom. But like that ignores what you want to win. Like, is it better to compete in something that has like a star super rare at the top, or the one that gives out 1,000 prizes instead of 20 because like you're more likely to get a prize? And people play differently. Like some people would much rather compete for the star super rare and unique that's up for first place. Yeah. And others are just like, I'm probably not going to get first, so I'd like to win something. And so I'm not going to enter this contest that has 5 rewards. I'll enter the one that has 500. And so like, who are we to tell you like what the best one is to enter? Because it all depends on like what you think, what you want to play for. Like the 17,000 contests that we can choose from every week. Like now we get to choose like what we're actually competing for. And like, there are some people who are like, let me just find out where all the Celtic cards are, and I'm going to compete in those competitions. And sometimes I win them. And other people are like, yeah, I just want to win anything. And so that's how we play.
The big headache for me in the last couple of weeks has been this unique kickoff. Seeing that unique kickoff there is very tempting, but there's only 3 prizes. Yeah. So I've been watching very carefully, like what the rankings have kind of like pulled up over the last couple of entries, just to see like what I might need to get or what kind of score I might need to like win a unique. And I was quite impressed actually with the uniques that were given as prizes in unique kickoff last week. There was a Saul defender, 23-year-old, I can't remember his name now, Advincula, who is the starting usually left back at Boca was the main prize.
He's a cult hero, him.
I can't remember who the other one was, but there were 3 uniques. They were pretty decent. And the bottom placed of those 3 winners won it with a score of 350. You don't get any XP bonus in kickoff apart from for your captain. In kickoff, in unique, you have to use a unique as your captain. You're only allowed to use 1 unique, and you're not allowed more than 10 uniques. So it discounts a lot of the whales, which is great. A lot of those people who have a lot of uniques already. It is basically catering for people exactly like me who have probably got a lot of super rares, handful of uniques. It's so tempting, but I'm just like, I would just need everyone to bang that weekend. I normally do have like at the moment I've got like Levitt or Secco as like I can use as U23 or Challenger or in kickoff. And my main problem at the minute is I'm a little bit short of super rare goalkeeper options. So it is a big like that or this at the moment for me. If I had 2 or 3 U23 or other super rare keepers, but this weekend I've only really got 1, and I'm going to use him in U23, I think. But it's an interesting opportunity there to win a unique, and to score 350 points. Bear in mind that your captain is going to get a 70% bonus as well. So if Levitt has a good fixture and he can hit like a 60-70, which he's more than capable of doing, then I might be like, this weekend he's got Celtic. I've looked historically at his performances against Celtic and they're not bad. He's got like a pretty decent average score against Celtic. I'm just not tempted enough at the moment this week, which is hard, but mostly due to the fact that I've not really got enough goalkeeping options. But going to be really interesting to see how those modes are attacked when they're opened up for kickoff super rare, kickoff rare. Have either of you two been getting involved in those kickoff, or are you like similar to me where they're just tempting you, not quite enough yet, almost there?
I don't think Laird's eligible for a kickoff.
How many uniques you got, Laird?
I have 0 uniques.
Oh, right.
There you go. Ineligible.
So I need 1. Yeah. No, the process of acquiring uniques just looks so daunting, and I don't have the patience to sit on a ton of ETH that I would need to get. Like if I happen to get the auction timing right, and it's someone that we all know who like the regular auction buyers, or excuse me, unique buyers are, that
Nanzo.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we should do, actually, that's exactly what we should do. You guys need to schedule Nanzo on this show, like during one of the unique auctions, just to like
kidnap him. His internet on.
But it's true that like there are enough people on the platform who buy uniques because they can, and that makes it really difficult for people who don't have uniques or only have 1 or 2 to get them. And I understand like why they do it, of course, but the other fact that like we never know when these uniques are coming, like, so I just my personality would not let me sit on that much ETH that I would need to buy a unique, and the last thing I'm ready to do is drop like $5,000 on a credit card for a JPEG.
Smart decision, I would say. Well, I think that brings up a kind of another interesting point, but maybe kind of parallel to kickoff. Somebody kind of broached on it earlier. I think we spoke about it 2 or 3 weeks ago, Stish. I think to compete in all competitions, you would need like 40 goalkeepers across scarcities or whatever. I look at my kind of hit list, and before Asia and America come back, for the amount of outfielders I've got, I could use at least, as a bare minimum, I could use 2 more rare goalkeepers like today out of thin air. They would really change the amount of teams I could put out. I don't know about quality and some of these cap modes, maybe it would work or whatever. But like I've mentioned at the top of the show, I can also kind of realize like, MLS isn't actually that far away, and like Japan isn't really either. If you guys, I'm sure will have looked at because goalkeepers, like me and you have spoken about quite famously a few times, Laird, like goalkeepers are like gatekeepers to competitions, basically, you know, in one way, shape, or form, you know. Have you guys made any moves with goalkeepers, maybe sold off some guys that are popping, or trying to get some number twos in, or anything like that, to get more teams out in this new normal that's coming?
I have definitely been speculating on the goalkeeper market. I don't want to spend out. It's annoying because I probably like bought a few sort of like really cheap ones in the hope they get a move, or, you know, in the hope that they become the number one. So I probably spent enough that I could have bought like a rare starting goalkeeper rather than like buy 5 very cheap ones that may become usable in the next few seasons. But yeah, do you know, I think I spend most of my time in the week scouring the internet for goalkeeper transfer news or rumors or anything that's potentially. And always, because even if you're not going to use them, goalkeepers, like in terms of like tradability, if you hit the right bit of information and you've got the goalkeeper who then starts, or, you know, there's an injury and you act on it before anyone else does, you can make quick money just by flipping those cards. But yeah, I'm sat on a few goalkeepers that may or may not make number one or may find their way into the team. So yeah, all the time. I haven't made any like concrete purchases on like ones. I definitely am. Again, like I need, because of these like modes opening up, I really do need another. I'm going to need a U23 super rare goalkeeper for next season, because I've only got Cook, really, and it's like Etienne Green I can't rely on anymore. Cook is aging out, and the other options I've got are all like speculative number 2 goalkeepers that may or may not find their way into number 1. So yeah, I think once the Asia season opens up, I may have to wait and see who is, and just buy and just spend out on a nailed one, because I could spend out on 5 potential stars for like 6 seasons time. But the reality of it is U23 cards are only usable for like maybe for 3 or 4 seasons if you're lucky. A lot of my really good cards are either aging out this summer or like next summer. So if I don't get a goalkeeper that I can use now, by the time that they become useful, all of my good cards have aged out and I can't afford to replace them for U23. So I think I just got to bite the bullet and buy one who is going to start. And, you know, we've spoken about that on here quite a bit. That might be Chris Brady. It might be Sasaki. It might be Tani if he finds his way into the starting lineup. And it's like, until we see who those goalkeepers are, like 2 or 3 games into the season, yeah, their price is going to go up because you're not speculating on them anymore. They're nailed. But if I've got, you know, I bought a super rare Cherky. We'll get into that in a minute. But I have got expensive super rare cards that need to be utilized properly. And if I don't have a goalkeeper, then they're not getting used to where they should be used. So yeah, so I have to realize that I need to act soon. But maybe I do need one that's nailed. Just have to spend on it, unfortunately. But, you know, if it means you compete, they'll pay for themselves over time. That's what I find. But what about you, Sue? In the market for a goalkeeper, Laird?
I actually deposited recently for like the first time in over a year with the idea of buying goalkeepers, out of season goalkeepers, and selling them coming into the season. Like that was my plan. And so I bought basically a couple MLS goalkeepers, rare and super rare. I had never bought a super rare goalie until like 2 months ago. I bought
soul destroying, isn't it?
What's that?
Soul destroying, isn't it?
I mean, just said he has to buy a U23 super rare goal. Like, I think that's the hardest thing to buy on the entire platform. Like, literally, there is nothing like uniques, sure. Like U23 super rare goalkeeper. I was just like,
pass.
It is horrible.
Good luck. Like, I really hope you get one, because that's just
I mean, like, try and maybe like no one will do a part exchange or anything like. It's only really recently that I've even really tried the part exchange route. Most people just won't, but they especially don't like to do it if you're going for like those top tier expensive cards. They want the ETH for those, right? And when there's only like maybe 5 to 10 of them on the platform, they know if you really want that, you're gonna have to pay for it. And again, that point you made about like having the ETH balance and stuff, and like I had an ETH balance because I kind of wanted to pick up a unique forward, and then ended up spending most of it on a Cherky super rare. But I still need a U23 goalie, and it's becoming more and more apparent that I'm putting in offers of like 1.6 to 1.8, which I feel like, that hurts sending that offer. That's a lot of money. But it's more likely going to cost me 2 to 2.5. It's like, it's painful, but if that yields rewards, then that, you'll get that money back eventually over time.
The toughest part about the trades is that they're going to want the cards that you want to pair with.
Exactly.
Like before this week, it's like, okay, yeah, you can have this super rare U23 goalkeeper. Just give me your Veerman. And it's like, well, the point was to play him with Veerman. So I don't want to give that up. Like,
no, it's exactly you're exactly right. And I have looked at my Veerman a couple of times this week. I did it before. Like, there was actually an auction going up on a super, like maybe this time last week, and I looked at that and I thought, if I'm going to shift that Veerman, it needs to be done before that auction goes out and his price drops, which it did. So now I'm like, I think I'm kind of like reserved the fact that I'm going to be stuck with my Veerman. Not like stuck is the wrong word, because I do still think he'll become a good player. I don't know what the situation at PSV is. They need a player like him in their starting lineup at the minute from the way they're playing. Maybe something's up with the manager there. I don't know. But if he moves, he'll be a great card somewhere else. So I'm hoping, he'll come in handy at some point. I'm probably just going to be stuck with him now. I don't really want to let him go at the prices he's going for now. But, bringing these goalkeepers in, I've got a few other super rares that are kind of like in a similar boat with Veerman, where like Marko Ilic, who has been pretty good in goal for Kortrijk this season, has fallen out of favour, and basically it's been made public he's not going to play for Kortrijk again. So we're waiting to see who he moves to. He's been linked to Vallecano, where he'll definitely be a number 2 behind Dimitrievski. So I'm like, I need to get rid of this guy if he's realistically going to move there. But he is good enough that if he moved to another like Belgian side, he'd probably be the number 1. So it's a difficult one at the moment. I've been hot-handed with him. I've been trying to like just move him on for someone. So I've put a few offers by way of like getting an Enzo Lafay rare, just like because I feel like he'll be a good player. His price has dropped a bit because people are worried he moves to like Bournemouth or something, but he's not going to probably. So I'm like, give me your Enzo Lafay rare. You can have my Ilic while he's still got an L15 in sight. But this is the game we play at the moment, isn't it? It's difficult, very difficult. But yeah, there's some people in the chat actually. Before I get too carried away, apparently the fixture or the new calendar has been launched while we've just been sat here chatting.
Oh, love it. Love it.
I had a feeling that was going to happen.
So we should get that up on screen and have a look at what it says.
Yeah, go for it, man. That sounds fun.
I'm going to
get Laird honest reaction before he filters it.
yeah.
And distills it into his nice little Laird.
For those of you joining us live, Andy and I on Sorare Andrews are going to talk about this. I was confident enough the calendar was going to come out today, because I think the last time the calendar came out, we had a topic that we were going to discuss unrelated to that, and then they introduced all the new cap modes, and it was like, oh, we should talk about that. I was sure this calendar was coming out today, so we are going to talk about this today.
Yeah,
that was good.
So I'm
trying it's Thursday today.
trying to work out if there's a quick way to summarize this, but it basically starts off with what's new. Cap competitions are here. We already know about that. We've kind of discussed cap a lot. So into the meat of it, reward balancing. A number of tier 3 rewards in All-Star, U23 and regional limited and rare competitions have been reallocated to the new cap competitions. So the cap competition is going to have an effect essentially on the reward pools of all the other pools. So we're going to probably see a decrease across the other regions to like move rewards over. It says the same for tier 2 as well. But it says we've increased the number of star cards and extra rewards in All-Star, U23 and regional. So it sounds like the tier 2 and 3s are going into cap mode, but there'll be more star rewards in the regions, which what do you guys make of that? Do you think that's a good move?
So
what's your initial reaction?
So what I did, and this is completely selfish of me, but like I've been buying super rares recently. previously it was because I wanted to do better in All-Star Super Rare because it didn't feel like a lot of the big hitters put their best cards there. And then it was like, now we have all these super rare cap modes. And I was like, oh, so now maybe I can play those. So the first thing I did was that I saw for the first game, what is this, 342? Although that's a midweek. So I'll look at 343. There are 60 prizes in All-Star Super Rare.
Oof.
And there are 35, 36, that's 71, and 103, if I did my math quickly, in the 3 super rare cap modes. So obviously it's not, you can't use the same lineup there, but there are 37 rewards in super rare cap 270, which is the highest one. 36 is 35, 36, and 37 in 220, 240, and 270. So like, that's where I look, and you can do that in rare and limited. It's like where are the most rewards in terms of like who's actually going to enter. We obviously don't know who's going to enter all of these. People are going to still play All-Star Rare instead of Cap 240, but
135 at All-Star Rare Pro, and that's again that'll be next weekend. So we might have a bit of J back then, but MLS won't be back by then. So I think like 130ish was like the peak of All-Star Rare Pro pre-World Cup when we had everything kind of playing. I think the biggest prize pools we got to was like maybe about 135 or something. So that's a good sign before we get Wen Prem, if we're all still playing coming, which I think we do. MLS returning, J&K and whatever. So that's a good sign. All-Star Rare Pro is a good one to look at, I think.
Yeah,
So I'm looking at next weekend as a better signal, because I was looking at the initial and I thought, oh, those reward pools look like they've gone down in size massively, but actually it's a midweek. So looking
343 is like
343 is the one we want to be looking at really for like reward pools. But there's nothing too drastic in terms of size of the pools, I don't think. Like if you already compete in U23, for example, the amount of cards, 36 super rares in super rare and 55 in rare pro, doesn't feel too different. I'd need to check historically where we're at there, but I think we get about 60 this weekend in U23. So it has come down a little bit, but if what they're saying is they're going to take a few of those tier 3 cards out of the rare pool, put them in, then it shouldn't have too much of an impact on like the pro divisions. It'll be a bit more on the rare divisions in the regions. I think a lot of those tier 3 rewards will probably be capped off and sent into the cap modes. So we might notice it a little bit more maybe in the rare divisions rather than, or like, like not in the pro divisions anyway.
Yeah. So I wanted to compare rare cap 240, which is the threshold, to All-Star Rare.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so All-Star Rare has 15 star rares at the top.
Yep.
And then 65 tier 1s. And the cap mode 240 rare 240 cap is super rares for the podium places. So the first one gets a tier 2 super rare. Second and third get tier 3 super rares, which I feel like you would rather finish 4th, 5th, or 6th because you can win a star there. Star rare.
Wow, yeah.
And then 13 tier 1s.
I think is the podium not a double pair?
Oh, is it?
Maybe. Yeah, they couldn't put a star for number 4, could they? And a tier 2 super rare at number 1. I would hope that's the way case. It's a double dunter.
Yeah, the way that they do that they put out.
It's got a wee star on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The breakdown thing is just
it's
so difficult to read.
Well, I was looking at the breakdown one in All-Star Rare Pro just to look at it. 20 stars. Again, that's kind of up at the upper echelon for All-Star Rare Pro of what we normally get. And again, with MLS and all the other leagues coming back, maybe we could get that as high as 30. That would be brilliant. And again, but on top of this, we are still waiting for, they were talking about more tiers, or additional tiers or whatever. So what is maybe we're categorizing as a star here, maybe that changes at some point and whatever. But yeah, really good that we've got these as well.
I mean, they have 5 tiers in NBA where there are a lot fewer players. So it feels like they should be able to do it for football.
Oh, All-Star Super Rare is going to have 2-star Super Rares on it.
Okay.
And 5 tier 1s behind it.
Yeah. See, now all those people who weren't entering are now going to go there.
Yeah, so that's an interesting top 7 to break, isn't it?
This time next week, we're going to be discussing what we're doing.
You need an SR keeper. You need the SR keeper now.
Yeah.
One there with a rare, you know, so that does fit in the field because there's way more super rare competitions to be going for. 2 stars are exciting. Of course, I'll be going for that.
So to go back actually to what you said, what we were talking about before about buying goalkeepers. When I made that recent deposit, I now have 3 super rare goalkeepers. And I bought the first one because I was entering All-Star Super Rare with a rare goalkeeper. And I was just like, if I'm coming up 4, 5, 6 points short, like the super rare goalkeeper means I get a reward. And I literally won a reward the first 2 weeks after I bought the super rare goalkeeper. So like, all right. And then it's like, well, he's in Turkey. So like when that runs out, I'm going to need another super rare. So I bought an MLS guy, and then it was like, oh wait, now we're going to have cap mode where I need to have a goalkeeper of the same scarcity. So I actually got a 3rd super rare goalie yesterday from the J League, who is just, I mean, they're all just guys. They're goalie. It doesn't even matter who they are. As long as they're not like Van de Voort or Diogo Costa, it doesn't matter. But you just look at all these and I'm like, I need to, like, I can enter these now. So like feels a little bit better that I can do that. Yeah. But man, super rare goalies are just the worst.
Someone in the chat's just pointed out as well that like U23 Super Rare also has a star tier Super Rare in it now.
Oh, so it does.
Wow, this is exciting. We're coming to the end of the show, and we're getting into like some really meaty stuff here. But
so does Challenger Super Rare? That's got a star. Champions got a star.
They're spreading them out.
All have a star at the top.
It sounds like the super rare pools have massively been sorted. So long as the quality of those stars or what they define a star as doesn't change too much, right?
Yeah,
because that can happen. You know, you can end up with some potential tier 1s classified as a star. But I'm excited. This time next week when we do the podcast again, I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion around like where is your main team going this weekend. It can be really interesting. But
unique.
Yeah, it's coming to the end of the show, guys. What are you looking forward to this weekend? Where's your big team going? Just to finish up, where's your main entry this weekend?
I'm not too sure. I think Celtic are playing someday they should be battering, so I think I'll be going All-Star heavy with all the Celtics again as per, and then filter out some regions from there. That's probably the best I can give you now until I do the stuff with Harry tonight. I've not looked at it, sorry. And then my head's in a blender looking at this now.
I know, it's like
yeah. Well, my kids are going to be hating me when they get back in from school, man, because they're going to be asking for their dinner. I'm going to be like looking at the J League fixtures over the next few weeks and trying to figure out.
No dinner tonight. We've got super rare goalies to be buying.
Yeah. Exactly that. Led, what are you looking at for this weekend?
Yeah. So Argentina's back, as you mentioned earlier, and I have a few guys in Argentina that I can finally use. It feels like I haven't used these cards in 10 years. So
yeah.
I think All-Star Super Rare will be at least the one that I pay attention to the most, kind of a last hurrah before I have to figure out if I'm going back in there or cap modes. I will say I now am like calculating, or calculating the total L15 scores now, or of my guys. I'm like, could I play this in cap like when I get there? And I'm like, oh wow, I actually can. Now that we have the rewards, it's like, oh, now like this, your whole like strategy just totally changes now that you have like so many more places that you could possibly play.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be spending the next week looking at those prize pools. I'm really excited to see, come the end of this week when we can look at who's in the pools. That is going to be pretty cool. For the next, once those cap mode pools are like visible, there's going to be a lot to talk about, definitely. But my weekend, hoping for a big a big turnout from my U23 Pro. I think it's going to rely quite heavily on Kenneth Taylor turning up, but and Cherky, the Super Rare. I bought a Super Rare Cherky. We didn't even get to talk about it.
Yeah, we didn't even get to it.
But we'll discuss it next time. But yeah, the Cherky's almost a whole podcast episode on his own, isn't he, at the moment, with everything that's going on there. But Matt, I've either timed it perfectly or horrendously. But we'll get into that. Everyone listening in the chat, it's been amazing. We've had such a great turnout in the chat. We didn't even get too many opportunities to talk to some of the good comments that were coming through. But keep the discussion going. The podcast will be live on all streaming platforms tomorrow morning. If you're listening to the podcast, we do try and broadcast this live now. So if you're listening to this, the podcast normally comes out on a Friday. We tend to do it live on a Wednesday or Thursday. So make sure you're following End Product Pod on social media. We'll be letting you know a little bit more about when to catch us. Laird, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Make sure any of you listening, go follow Lairdinho, Andrew M. Laird on Twitter, and all the good work that they are doing down at Sorare Data.
I heard Laird had changed his name to Professor Laird after this week.
Professor Laird, yeah.
At Professor Laird on Twitter.
Professor Laird.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for all the stuff that you guys do. Like, Sorare is just a lot more fun because of people like you guys who talk about it with such like passion, and we all don't necessarily have people in our regular lives who are really into Sorare, and it's like really fun to like hear other people talk about Sorare, and it's an absolute pleasure to be able to do it with you guys. Thank you.
Anytime, man. Welcome anytime.
We feel the same, Andy. We feel the same.
Exactly.
Right back at you, buddy.
Exactly that. Thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure. I feel like we just scratched the surface of what we could have got into this week. So if you are out there listening, keep the conversations going, keep the comments coming on the YouTube, on Quinny's channel, and we can get you involved in the podcast in weeks to come. Big up everyone. It's been a pleasure as always. Good luck this weekend, and we'll catch you same time next week. Cheers all.